In 2004, Bay Area rapper Mac Dre was killed in Kansas City.
When a stolen car pulled up alongside his van, fired, and sped off.
There were rumors, which police said were false, that Fat Tone did it. Dow claims he didn't think so. In 2005, he invited Fat Tone to Las Vegas to meet Snoop Dogg. Dow is seen leaving a casino with Fat Tone and Cowboy. He claims they went their separate ways.
I don't know where they went, but he says he has some business to handle.
1992. Andre Louis Hicks, known by his peers and the music industry as Mac Dre, got embroiled in a series of events that sent him down a path that would end with him losing his life. That year, Mac Dre was on a pursuit to boost his music career, launching the label Romper Room Records. At the same time, law enforcement was particularly interested in solving the string of robberies that took place at pizza shops in the Viejo area where Mac Dre moved to from Oakland.
Well, I was born in the big Oak town, Oakland, California. That's where my mama spit me out. But immediately we was rushed to Vallejo.
March 26, 1992. Mac Dre was in a vehicle along with his friends, Jamal David Diggs, also known as J. Diggs, and Simon Curtis Nelson, also known as Kilo Kurt. According to reports, Mac Dre and his friends were intercepted by officers of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, as well as Viejo police on their way back out of Fresno. The basis for the arrest were on charges of conspiracy to commit burglary. FBI reports state that Mac Dre's associates were out casing a Fresno bank with plans of committing a heist. But a local news crew had caught wind of the incident over the police scanner and had prematurely gone to the bank, promoting them to abort mission. Mac Dre, being innocent of the crime, refused to turn into an informant to be used against his associates, so he was imprisoned along with them. He would be sentenced to 5 years, while J. Diggs and Kilo Kurt received 10 years.
35 FBI agents, police and everything, they said that we was out in Fresno casing banks, plotting on robbing the bank.
No bank was robbed.
While it seemed harsh for such a stern punishment for Mac Dre, given he wasn't involved, the incentive behind their motive could have been fueled by Mac Dre's disrespect towards members of the law in his song Punk Police, where he went as far as calling officials out by name.
And I'ma dedicate this to Detective McGraw.
As you imagine, that caused a stir and placed a target on Mac Dre's back by law enforcement.
So is it true that before the Vallejo police were, annoyed at you because you had written the song Punk Police?
Yeah, they hated it. I had everybody singing the song Punk.
Information would surface with more details on the bust, stating that a third friend was in the vehicle, Corey Dunn. Apparently, Dunn was flipped to an informant by the FBI and wore a wire while in the vehicle, leading the cops right to Mac Dre and his associates. Later on, August 24, 2010, Corey Dunn was found deceased with multiple bullet wounds. J. Diggs would later reveal Mac Dre could have walked free from the charges, of which he was innocent, if he gave the cops the information they wanted against him. But he stayed true to the bond and code they lived by and did his time, as opposed to Corey Dunn, who he labeled in gang culture a rat. 4 years later, in 1996, Mac Dre is released earlier than his full sentence, mainly assumed to be due to good behavior, and his freedom was invested in turning his focus to solidify his spot in the music industry. He would launch the label Fizz Entertainment, meant to realize his dream as the hip-hop mogul of the Bay Area, but instead led to his untimely end. Mac Dre was on a high, taking over the Bay Area and building a buzz in the international scene. His music attracted fans from all races, all walks of life.
I got fans, like, you come to the Mac Dre show, man, you might see any kind of person there.
He was talented, with a future that would place him at the top of the rap hierarchy. His music and fame was reaching as far as exotic islands like Hawaii. But Mac Dre was still learning how to navigate from the gang-influenced life he's accustomed to and his new fame as an artist. This would be his undoing in 2004. Reports state that a promoter referred to as Damon Whitmill saw the opportunity to profit in hosting a concert with Bay Area artists like Mac Dre, who were taking over the music scene. With that idea in mind, he booked a number of Bay Area artists like Mac Dre, Keek the Sneak, and Yuckmouth, along with a bunch of others for Halloween weekend. Whitmill would later convey information breaking down what transpired between him and Mac Dre on the weekend that he lost his life. Whitmill and Mac Dre allegedly made an agreement to the total sum of $12,500, where Mac Dre would receive $6,000 up front along with paid airfare and stay in Kansas City for him and other artists. October 27, 2004, Mac Dre, along with other Bay Area artists, arrived in Kansas City, where they were allegedly driven around by an acquaintance of Mac Dre by the name of Savino Davila. Once settled in, Mac Dre proceeded to begin to honor contractual obligations in the form of radio appearances and record signings at local music stores. It was from there where things apparently began taking a turn for the worst, setting events in motion resulting in Mac Dre's demise. Reports state that according to Whitmill, Mac Dre was unprofessional in his dealings, arriving late to his obligations and leaving early, which caused another issue for the weekend shows, as the record signing at Byron Robinson's music store also acted as promotion for the event. The end result was disappointment from the promoter, the store owner, and fans of the popular Bay Area rapper Mac Dre. Friday, October 29th. It was the big show and a chance for Whitmill to make big on his efforts. But according to him, yet again, Mac Dre arrived late, resulting in him having to rent the venue for extra time to accommodate Mac Dre's tardiness. However, the night was only about to get worse. According to both Whitmill and his alleged DJ that night, Mac Dre's entire entourage of 20-plus people rushed the stage, which resulted in fans also following suit. The issue was cause for the music to be cut off numerous times due to security reasons, until finally, the show was shut down. This is where Mac Dre made a big error. Keek the Sneak, along with Yuckmouth, felt a negative presence at the show. According to them, there was tension, and the turnout was horrible, so they performed and left without receiving the other end of their payment. They told the promoter to wire them the funds and got out of Kansas City.
So it was 2 shows. I made it to 1 show, but me and my wife was going to Hawaii the next day, and I couldn't make it to the show that Mac Dre died. The same van that picked me up, took me to the airport, brought me to the show and all that, was the van that Dre died in, you know what I mean? I just feel like it was a lot of friction, you know what I'm talking about?
I felt it, the vibe when I was out there. I felt it when we was at the show, you know what I mean? When we, you know what I mean? It was some type of tension I didn't even know of, but it was some tension backstage. I felt, I'm like, yeah, I don't even want to be around here, period. So I left. A couple other people left. We all left. Only Dre stayed.
Whatever the reason, Mac Dre stayed while they left, in an attempt to recoup lost funds on what seemed like a failed event. The promoter allegedly booked Mac Dre to perform at a Halloween party Sunday the 31st, 2004, to close off the weekend. According to other sources like Jay Diggs, Mac Dre was scheduled to be there but ended up in an altercation with the promoter. From all appearances, Mac Dre showed up and did his part. But when it was time to leave, the promoter was refusing to pay the remaining sum owed, as he wanted Mac Dre to stay longer. However, the promoter tells a different story, stating that Mac Dre again showed up late and instead of trying to live up to his obligations, he allegedly left after 30 minutes without even performing. Davila, who spoke with Mac Dre before he arrived at the event, would allegedly later tell detectives that Mac Dre mentioned to him he didn't feel safe due to the nature of how things were organized. At this point, Whitmill, the promoter, is left at the event while Mac Dre leaves after the argument in a white van, allegedly driven by a man by the name of Pierce. Mac Dre would never make it back to his hotel. Reporters state that around 2:30 a.m., the white van was traveling northbound on Highway 71, just south of 75th Street, when a dark sedan pulled alongside the driver's side of the van and unloaded upwards of 30 bullets from two separate guns, an automatic rifle, and a .45 pistol.
On Interstate 70, a group of armed men in a stolen car pulled up alongside his van, fired, and sped off.
The sedan rammed the driver's side of the van in between taking shots at it. The van would lose control and plunge into a ditch, tossing Mac Dre from the vehicle while the driver crawled from the wreckage and ran to the hotel for help. At approximately 3:30 a.m., an hour after the incident occurred, police would arrive at the scene to find a motionless Mac Dre with a bullet wound to the back of his neck. He was pronounced deceased at the scene. The black vehicle used in the homicide would be found later on with shell casings matching those at the scene, and holes from inside the door indicated the shooter fired from inside the vehicle rather than hanging outside. Further confirmation it was the vehicle in the crime was found in the white paint along the passenger side of the door where the white van was rammed in the attack. Mac Dre's passing shook the entire Bay Area. To them, he was a legend gone far too soon. But the question plaguing everyone's mind was, who was responsible? Many of those fingers pointed to a Kansas City rapper by the name of Anthony Watkins, also known as Fat Tone. Rumor began circulating that Fat Tone and Mac Dre had a falling out that weekend before Dre was murdered. The allegations of his involvement were later escalated when another rumor, even more sinister than the last, began circulating. It stated that Fat Tone released a song dissing Mac Dre and hinting at being responsible for his passing. As it turned out, that seemed far from the truth, as no one has ever claimed to hear the song.
Terrible.
You know, that situation happened, and then the streets start talking. Everyone starts saying, oh, it was Fat Tone. It was Fat Tone. Because Fat Tone has a song called, where he says, I killed the Thizzle Man, and so forth. But I've never heard that song.
Me neither.
You see what I'm saying? And he publicly denied it. He said, nah, I had love for Mac Dre. They had songs together.
From friends of Mac Dre to enemies, they all agree Fat Tone wasn't responsible for Mac Dre's passing. But it was too late. On May 3rd, 2005, assailants would retaliate for Mac Dre, taking Fat Tone's life along with another associate by the name of Jermaine Atkins, also known as Cowboy, and a possible female witness by the name of Lee Larson, who later lost her life.
In 2004, Bay Area rapper Mac Dre was killed in Kansas City. There were rumors, which police said were false, that Fat Tone did it.
He's among the most popular local rap artists, touting 5 CDs, including this new release. But after the murder of Mac Dre, Fat Tone's name began circulating in hip-hop e-magazines and websites as a possible suspect. Kansas City police followed the sites, but never considered Watkins more than a person of interest. Now Fat Tone is murdered while visiting Vegas. The two murders months apart.
The bodies of Fat Tone and Cowboy found near a construction site. A car, which prosecutors argue was connected to the scene, found torched in California 2 days later. Police also pointed to Dow's link to his co-defendant Jason Mathis and a woman who was found murdered in California later that year before Dow was in custody.
The suspects, Andre Dow, also known as Mac Minister, and associate Jason Atkins, also known as Corleone, were later apprehended after they were the last persons caught on footage that night, leaving the casino with Fat Tone. What's more, police claim Mac Minister invited Fat Tone out to Vegas with the idea that he had connections with Snoop Dogg and was organizing an introduction only to have Fat Tone set up. Although he wasn't charged for the hit on her, Mac Minister will also be tied to the homicide of Lee Larson after unearthing she was allegedly engaged to his accomplice and was a possible witness to their crime. Mac Minister and Jason Mathis was found guilty and sentenced to 4 life sentences without parole in 2008. After serving 16 years behind bars, Mac Minister still proclaims his innocence and is on a new mission to be freed after the testimony of a witness at the time is now recanting his testimony.
I just want to make a record. He testified against my client in trial. I know.
As attorney Robert DeMarco argues for Dow's freedom, the 8 News Now investigators have been following closely. One major development, this witness who testified against Dow now says he lied.
It's been under conscience and you deeply regret making the false testimony and statements against Mr. Dow, correct? Correct.
As time proceeded, the passing of Mac Dre continued to haunt the Bay Area, his family, and friends. A rapper by the name of JT the Bigger Figure recently went live on his profile, allegedly exposing the true betrayal of Mac Dre, stating that it was his own friend Jay Diggs, along with Kilo Kurt, who set him up to be taken out so that they can take ownership of his label.
If you know the history, you know Mac Dre was booked at 2 shows in Kansas City. He was booked for 2 shows on the same night. Okay? Kilo Kurt was not happy about this. He was feeling some kind of way. So when you see Kilo Kurt and Jay Diggs talking about RIP Mac Dre and they got the Mac Dre chains and they made all that money, nigga, off Mac Dre when and his little daughter was out there starving, yeah. Some backdoor happened with Mac Dre.
Jay Diggs would respond, shutting down any truth to the allegations.
Make up the story, then he start freestyling it and all that. Well, none of that makes sense. None of that add up. I really wouldn't be doing it. I'm not doing it for JT. He need the views, he need the likes, because that's the kind of he is. That's all he on. That's all he do. You see what he do.
Jay Diggs also made it known on an interview with Vlad TV that the ones responsible for Mac Dre's passing also paid with their life later on. One person's passing led to so much bloodshed, a legend engraved in hip-hop always to be remembered. Rest in peace, Mac Dre.